The medieval period was a time of great upheaval, disease and death. As such, it was easy for people to be accused of crimes against the crown or God himself. It was also a time when people's lives were hard and superstitious beliefs ran rampant. And so today we're going to look at 3 horrific witch hunts from medieval history. Before we begin, let me just say this. It is important to remember that those accused of witchcraft during the medieval period were mostly innocent people who had fallen victim to a series of unfortunate circumstances. Often they were mentally ill or simply different from everyone else. But rather than seeking help for these individuals, society decided to punish them, sometimes to a horrific degree. With that said, let's start with the most famous witch hunt of the medieval period, the Pendle Witch Trials. The Pendle Witch Trials took place in 1612 in Lancashire, England. They were a series of hearings presided over by the local justices of the peace, in which 10 people were tried for the crime of witchcraft. The trials were based on the testimony of 2 young girls, Alison Device and her sister Janet, who claimed that they had been afflicted by the devil and that the only way to cure them was to kill the 10 accused witches. What followed can only be described as a travesty of justice. The trials were a complete sham, and the only evidence against the accused was the testimony of the 2 girls, who were known to be liars and had even confessed to making up the whole thing. Nevertheless, 7 of the 10 accused were found guilty and sentenced to death. They were hanged on August 12, 1612, and their bodies were left hanging as a warning to others. To this day, the Pendle Witch Trials are seen as one of the darkest chapters in English legal history. Next, let's look at the North Berwick Witch Trials. The North Berwick Witch Trials were a series of hearings that took place in Scotland in 1590 and 1591. They were the result of a campaign by King James VI to root out and punish those he believed were conspiring with the devil to harm him. The trials were presided over by the Court of Session in Edinburgh and were notable for the use of torture to extract confessions. Over 70 people were accused of witchcraft, with many more suspected. Of those accused, at least 30 were found guilty and executed. One of the most famous of these trials was that of Agnes Sampson, who became known as the Mother of the Witches. She was tortured for over 40 days before finally confessing to a litany of charges, including the crime of meeting the devil in the shape of a cat. Finally, let's look at the Loudun Possessions. The Loudun Possessions were a series of events that took place in the French town of Loudun in 1632 and 1634. They involved the supposed possession for nuns by the devil and their subsequent exorcism by the Benedictine monk Father Urbingray. The possessions were the result of a power struggle between the nuns and their new abbess, who they accused of mistreating them. The nuns began exhibiting strange behavior, such as speaking in tongues and levitating, and it was decided that they were possessed. Father Grier was called in to perform the exorcism, but after several failed attempts, he was arrested and accused of being a heretic and a sorcerer. He was tortured and eventually executed for his crimes. The Loudun Possessions became a major scandal and led to the deaths of several prominent figures, including the 4 nuns, Father Greandia and the abbess. In conclusion, the medieval period was a time when fear and superstition often led to the persecution of innocent people. The Pendle Witch Trials, the North Berwick Witch Trials, and the Loudun Possessions are just 3 examples of this dark chapter in history. It is important to remember and learn from these events so that we can strive to create a better future. Now it's time to make your voice heard. Which of these witch hunts was the most disturbing? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and join us next time for more. Until then, stay safe and stay curious.